Hey, everybody, thank you for being in class tonight. I know this is a lot unusual in our setting, um, and I appreciate you bearing with us. The goal this week is actually, we'll see if we get there now, and I'll explain in just a second why I say that. But is to go the goal is to go through the whole Sermon on the Mount, which that's a lot. And so instead of me doing that, the goal was to get our individual groups to go through parts of it, and hopefully we'll get to that. But there's a lot going on with a lot of people and some very heavy prayer requests, and it's hard to get into this stuff with that. This is real. This is uh, unfortunately part of life and an imperfect world. And you know, I'm thankful that we have this group here in this class together. That we have a church family that loves each other, that cares for each other, and holds each other up through some unimaginable times. And I know we could go around the circle and share stories of those things of when that's you and your family have been held up, and I know that this class will do a good job of surrounding each other through these things. And so I appreciate your prayer, Cam, and I know that we'll keep praying for all these things going on, and it's a lot. We are in this series of kind of relooking at the life of Jesus and the things that he said, the things that he did, and the way that he wants us to live. And tonight is looking at the idea of Jesus is our teacher, and you know there's a lot with the teachings of Jesus. There's a lot that he did, that he said, and I think there's no better example than the Sermon on the Mount of being just a big section of teaching that he did in his life. But before we get to that, I'd like to ask this question to get us talking a little bit. Uh, it goes well with some of these things, and I'll answer this first to break the ice. But who's someone you look up to for how they respond to the kinds of ups and downs life throws at us? What about their approach would you like to copy in your own life? There, I'll go first. There's a lot of people I thought of immediately. People that you know, people that you don't know, people like a John Walton, and how he's gone through stuff. People that I grew up with in Mobile and how they've handled things. People that I was around in my time at Harding that I thought of. But there's a lot of people that have been good examples to me in how they handle ups and downs. And I think of even people in this classroom, Chris being one of those, who is a great example for me and how he has handled ups and downs. And I wish, and I think about those people. I wish I could be more positive when things aren't going how I think they're supposed to go. And so that's the big thing that I'm really trying to do better in my life. Anybody got anybody that they look up to and something that uh, they want to copy better? Yeah, definitely. What about him would you think is the best thing to copy?
He's so even keeled with everything. And you can tell that when, like, if you were to go to him with something, he's not just listening, he's actually like taking it in and it affects him. But he has a real strength of character that comes through with. with everything that he goes through and he's
Yeah.
helped us with. So.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I agree. If you don't know Stan, he's one of the security guys that will be in the foyer a lot of Sundays and Wednesdays and Sunday nights and all. And you need to get to know him and spend some time with him. Somebody over here was raising their hand. Yeah.
So I'm gonna say Jay and Christy Walton. Our daughter Gracie is really good friends with Bethany, and so we see them quite a bit. And they were at our house yesterday picking Bethany up, and I've just been so, I guess, encouraged by what they've been through and how they've handled it over the past year. But we were talking about some things post surgery for Christy and post diagnosis and being in remission and all of that. And Jay said, I have no anxiety about this because he said, we're going to work the plan in front of us the best we can. And if the plan changes, well, that's in God's hands. And he just said it with like such, I've said that before, but not really all the way felt it. But the way he said it, it was like, he really feels that way. And it was incredible because I struggle to get there myself when things go wrong in my life. And not that it's easy for him, but I was just really impressed by how resolute he was about that attitude because I struggle in that area.
Yeah. Jay is a special guy, and he means that when he says that. Yeah.
For me, it's Barry. He has, I think it's ALS or is it?
It's something.
Yeah, so I spoke with him once and he kind of told me what's happening, but he's still out there preaching the gospel. He goes to Africa. It's unbelievable, and his body gives out on him.
Yeah. Barry is a great example. Oh, anybody else? Yeah.
I know I saw the surprise when Benny said, if you know anything about her, she is going through a tremendous amount of loss in her life. If you've ever met her and talked to her, you probably wouldn't even know it. She buried a child. Her son died when he was 17. She's buried a husband. She's got another husband that's got some health issues. And, but she said one of the most positive outlooks on life and is always looking out for other people.
Yeah. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. Anybody else? Yeah.
My grandmother is one of those quiet Christians that's in the background, that's super steadfast. And when something little happens that you would say, oh, that's such a good coincidence, she sees God in everything.
Yeah.
Because she's very quick to give God the credit for any little good thing and very quick to go to him for any little bad thing.
Yeah, that's great. It's great to have people in our lives that we see that. Somebody over here was.
I was just gonna say, my parents, they have about 4 or 5 couples that they're really close with, and just how they've modeled community for us and bearing with one another,
Yeah.
like whether whether it's like deaths of parents or, sickness, like the way they've cared for each other.
Yeah.
Like I know that any one of their friends, like I could go to them like as a parent figure, or if I know if like one of my parents were sick, they would be there for us in a heartbeat.
Yeah. Those couples are pretty special, and to see them out together, we all have people that we look up to and people that we see what they do and we want to learn from them and we admire them and all. And I asked this question as you were coming in, just not to answer out loud, but we all have those plan B, C, or sometimes D, Z days when things fall apart, surprise us. What default version of yourself kind of comes out when those things happen, and then where did you learn that from? I think it's worth considering because of this. Because of this is everybody is being trained. Everybody's being taught. It's not a am I willing to be taught? It's not am I being taught by something? And we all are, whether we realize it or not. And so the question is, who or what is teaching me to be and act the way I am? There's just a lot of life experience that we go through that are teaching us things, whether it's trauma from when we were growing up, whether we would call it that or not, and actually say it it is what it is. Maybe that's part of that. Maybe it's something that your family, you're around you, taught you growing up. Your friends, your kids, your boss or coworkers at your job, school. There's a lot of ways that we're learning every single day. The way that we react, the way that we take in information and we give out information. It's not just a information exchange, though. It's honestly a forming of our hearts, a forming of our habits, a forming of our actions. You see, Jesus isn't the only teacher with ideas. A lot of people have ideas, don't they? And theirs are always the best. He is the only one who teaches the way of life, though. If Jesus is going to be our teacher, if he's going to be the one that that we're learning from, then that is how we get life. That's how we grow. It's not going to be these other things around us influencing us as much as it is Jesus. However, maybe I'm alone in this, but maybe not. I feel like a lot of times we treat him and his teachings as just like quotes that we can screenshot and then they're our pictures and we never go back to those screenshots again. Anybody got those? I guess I'm the only one. Or things that we just retweet, things that they look good to us, but they don't really change anything about us. We just think it sounds good, and so we're gonna repeat it a lot of times. And so we screenshot them and we save them because we think those things from Jesus. Hey, that's a good one. Or I screenshot it and send it to my spouse because hey, she or he needs to work on that one. We do those things, but the idea of it actually forming something different in us is hard to take in. It's hard to actually take it personally and use it as something that is going to change our lives. It's going to change our habits. You see, Jesus had something different about him. And in Matthew chapter 7 says this, when Jesus had finished saying these things, the crowds were astonished at his teaching because he taught as one who had authority and not as their scribes. You see, people weren't just impressed by his content, they were hit by his authority. A lot of times we can just let Jesus be someone who gives us good advice. And then we find a way to kind of fit it into the way that we were already going to do things to begin with. And if Jesus' teachings, Jesus' ways can fit into that, into our plans, then we find a way to make it work. And if not, then it was good advice, and some advice I take, some advice I don't have to take. But Jesus' words have authority. There's something a little different than that. So let me ask this. Where do people most often want Jesus to be a consultant, just somebody we check in with to see what they think about something, rather than a teacher with authority?
They've already done the thing that they wanted to do, and then they try and go find oh, see, this was God's will, this was, and now it may or may not have been, but they didn't go to Jesus first and say, okay, is this, which way I should, but after it's a fait accompli, then they want, reinforcement.
Yeah. We look for that reassurance from what we've already done and try to make it fit that. Yeah, that's true. What else? Yeah.
We get our toes stepped on.
Okay. Yeah. That's right. Yes.
Times of trouble and sickness, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but like just in the hospital becomes a real religious place real quick.
Yeah.
Because a lot of sickness, a lot of surgery, a lot of people going through things that they never thought they'd go through, never thought they'd imagine. And when things get like that, they turn to God.
Yeah, you're right. And we all know people that have gone through those things, and that sense of authority has stuck with them, that God becomes that, and in those moments, and then sticks through that. And we also know, and maybe even have experienced ourselves, that once things get better in our lives, then God, Jesus, His ways aren't as important to us in those times. And when things are hard, it's easy to say I'm relying on God. When things are easy, it's easy to feel like we don't have to. Yeah, and I want you to think about this, and we don't have time to get to this, but is there a teaching of Jesus that you admire but have a hard time practicing? This idea of there's some hard things that He taught, and a lot of us are comfortable with Jesus as someone who's inspiring, or someone that we can look up to, but we're very uncomfortable, me certainly included, we're very uncomfortable with Jesus as someone who is forming who we become. And I say that as adults, and we're still becoming who I hope we're still becoming who we're going to become. I hope we're still trying to become more like Jesus every day. But a lot of times we're okay with Him inspiring those things, but not really helping form those things. So there was something very different about Jesus as a teacher. You see, the best teachers I think of, and you probably could think of growing up, were ones that didn't just give you information. They just want to tell you how much they knew, and then make you repeat back to them on a test or a paper or something how much they knew about things. And you never really learned the material. You just had to repeat back to what they knew. The best teachers were ones that really formed something in you, a passion for the subject, a passion for what they were trying to teach you, and helped you actually learn the material and take on the ability to do that. And with Jesus, he's more than just passing information to us. He's somebody that is trying to form hearts, habits, and really change eternity. And so that brings us to the Sermon on the Mount. The Sermon on the Mount is Jesus' teaching, living in God's kingdom in His ways. It's really the most profound teaching. It talks about living a blessed life. It deepens the meaning of some Old Testament passages, and it's Jesus' attempt to truly reveal the true nature of God and what God expects in His kingdom. It requires an inner transformation of character and motives. It goes past just looking religious and actually being a follower of God. In the Sermon on the Mount, He urges people to reflect on God's generous heart, His merciful love towards others, even enemies, as citizens of a different kingdom. And so what I'd like to do in this time left together, and we don't have a lot of time left, but I want to do this. We're going to each take a passage, and I'll give you one, and go through these different things. I think there's 8 groups, so we'll go through 8 passages, and have your group answer some questions that are on that sheet. And what that sheet is helping you kind of think about some of these things and read more into what Jesus is saying and studying that, because we couldn't go through the whole Sermon on the Mount together. But then there's a line, and the rest of that are questions that I think are worth considering this week as you go forward. You leave here tonight, talk about with your husband, your wife, your kids, whoever, somebody you're close to. And then at the bottom of the back side of that is also some homework about putting these things into practice. And so if we do this, let's do this. we'll go with oaths and promises, vengeance and enemies, generosity, prayer. Back here, let's go fasting, treasures, worry, and judging. And so here's the idea is to go around the circle and introduce yourselves. Even if you've known the people for 20 years, they may have forgotten your name in this moment, and so it's worth doing that. But then have somebody read the passage, summarize it, and then see if there's an Old Testament connection to it. Use Google if you need to. Compare Jesus' teaching to that Old Testament teaching, and then come up with a real life scenario where this plays out. And really, if you get time, and what I really like to do is think about the question of what's the heart that Jesus is going after in this issue? What's the heart issue Jesus is targeting here? And so if y'all want to go through with your groups and do that, that'll be great. For those online, I've put this on the screen for you to see, and with the questions and everything that these groups are going through, and some other things to think about while these groups are doing the same thing. So, go. You know, I as we wrap up, I want to think about this, the heart issue behind the section that you and your group looked at. I meant to actually share an example with you, but we got in a hurry. I do want to share something with you real quick about this section. It's the murder and conflict section of Matthew 5. The idea that Jesus doesn't just say don't murder. He goes after anger and contempt, or maybe you could even say disrespect, because we don't really use the word contempt, and even broken relationships. And then he says fixing those relationships is so important that it should come before worship. That's pretty amazing. It means that Jesus isn't only preventing kind of that worst case scenario, murder, but he's going to the heart of the issue. And he says, fixing those broken relationships is important to do quickly. He was trying to make sure a person's worship wasn't fake, because they're going to worship and then they got all these messed up relationships, and so it's hard to have, be able to genuinely worship and have a lot of broken relationships. I hope that these relationships that have formed in this circle have been a good thing for you, and you've grown from this. These are people that you want to be in heaven with one day, and so I hope that you see these people in the circle as that. And the heart issue, was there anything that came out from this, and the thing that you studied with your group that stood out to you that you maybe hadn't seen before?
The scripture says that God wants you to come to him and tell him what you need. He already knows it, but he wants you to be just real with him. And I think in a lot of these things, it requires an element of vulnerability.
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's hard sometimes to come to the Lord and say, Lord, like, I'm struggling with this. Even though he knows it, like some of them were saying, like, actually putting it into words and saying, I'm failing you in this area. I need you. That's hard for us as humans.
You're right. Vocalizing what we're struggling with is tough. I know that's the bell, but thank you for sharing that. And I think Jesus goes beyond this behavior modification information to the heart of things. He goes below the surface level expectations to motives, to trust, to anger, worry, pride, control. And then he's trying to protect some things in these teachings. He's trying to protect relationships, integrity, peace, our hearts, a non-anxious life, living in his kingdom. And so if we see these teachings as something that's trying to transform and then even protect those things in us, I think it can make a difference. I think it can be challenging, for sure, but also eternity changing for us. There's a lot of questions on these sheets that I hope you can look at, and then think about this. What's one moment you can predict is coming this week where you want Jesus to teach you a different response than what you've had in the past? And that homework is at the bottom of that sheet. And take time to do it. It's not to make your life more difficult, but it is to try to take these teachings of Jesus from staying in this room and take them out with us through this week. If you can take one of them and change the next 7 days, I think that's a pretty big success. Love you guys. Thank you for being here.